The snow fell in thick curtains that January afternoon in 1883, transforming the outskirts of Reno, Nevada into a frozen wasteland that seemed determined to swallow everything in its path. Nathaniel Ortega spotted the crumpled form half buried in a snowdrift just beyond the last building on the edge of town, and his heart seized in his chest when he realized it was a woman, her dark hair fanned across the white powder like spilled ink, her lips tinged blue from the cold. He dismounted from his horse in one fluid motion, his boots crunching through the fresh snow as he rushed to her side. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow, and when he pressed his fingers to her neck, her pulse felt weak and thready beneath his touch. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms, surprised by how light she felt, as though she had not eaten a proper meal in weeks. Her clothes were threadbare, offering little protection against the Nevada winter, and frost clung to her eyelashes like tiny diamonds. "Hold on," he murmured, though she could not hear him. "Just hold on." Nathaniel carried her through the snow toward his small cabin at the edge of town, grateful that he had chosen to ride the perimeter that afternoon. Another hour and she would have been buried completely, another soul lost to the unforgiving winter. He kicked open his door and brought her inside, laying her carefully on his bed near the potbelly stove. The fire had burned low and he quickly stoked it, adding fresh logs until flames licked hungrily at the wood. He worked methodically, removing her wet shoes and stockings, wrapping her feet in warm towels. Her hands were like ice, and he chafed them gently between his palms, willing warmth back into her frozen limbs. She stirred slightly, a soft moan escaping her lips, but her eyes remained closed. He draped every blanket he owned over her trembling form, then set about preparing soup. The broth he had made the day before sat in a pot on his small stove, rich with vegetables and chunks of beef. He ladled some into a bowl, letting it cool slightly as he pulled a chair close to the bed. She was young, he realized now in the firelight, perhaps mid-20s, with delicate features and dark lashes that rested against pale cheeks. Even in her weakened state, there was something striking about her, something that made his chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. "Come on now," he said softly, sliding an arm beneath her shoulders to lift her slightly. "You need to eat something." Her eyelids fluttered, and for a moment he glimpsed eyes the color of aged whiskey before they closed again. He brought the spoon to her lips, and instinctively she parted them, accepting the warm broth. She swallowed weakly, then again and again, each sip seeming to bring a little more color back to her face. After several spoonfuls, her eyes opened fully, confusion and fear clouding them as she registered her surroundings. She tried to pull away, but she had no strength. "Easy now," Nathaniel said, his voice gentle. "You are safe. I found you in the snow outside town. You were unconscious." She stared at him, her breathing quickening, and he could see her trying to assess whether he posed a threat. He set the bowl down on the small table beside the bed and moved back slightly, giving her space. "My name is Nathaniel Ortega. This is my cabin. You were freezing to death out there. I brought you inside to warm up." He gestured to the bowl. "You need to eat more. When did you last have a proper meal?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. She swallowed hard and tried again. "I do not know," she whispered, her voice hoarse and barely audible. "Days, maybe a week." His jaw tightened. A week. No wonder she had collapsed. "What is your name?" "Lydia," she said after a moment's hesitation. "Lydia Sinclair." "Well, Miss Sinclair, you are going to eat this entire bowl of soup and then you are going to sleep. We can talk more when you have regained some strength." He picked up the bowl again and held it out to her. She tried to take it, but her hands shook so badly that broth sloshed over the rim. Nathaniel caught the bowl before it could spill and shook his head. "Let me help you." For a long moment, she simply looked at him, and he could see the struggle in her eyes. Pride warred with necessity, independence with survival. Finally, she nodded slightly, and he began feeding her again, one careful spoonful at a time. She ate slowly at first, then more eagerly as her body recognized its desperate need for sustenance. "Not too fast," he cautioned. "Your stomach needs time to adjust." When the bowl was empty, she leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion written in every line of her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was going to die out there." "You nearly did." Nathaniel studied her, taking in the worn state of her dress, the thinness of her frame. "How did you end up outside Reno in the middle of winter with no proper coat?" Lydia closed her eyes, and he saw moisture gather at the corners. "It is a long story." "I have got time," he said quietly, "but it can wait until you have rested." She nodded, already drifting toward sleep. Within moments, her breathing deepened and evened out, her body finally surrendering to its need for rest. Nathaniel sat watching her for a while, the firelight casting dancing shadows across the rough wooden walls of his cabin. He had lived alone for 3 years now, ever since coming to Nevada to work as a ranch hand for the Double O spread just outside town. It was a solitary existence, but he had never minded. He valued his independence, his freedom to come and go as he pleased. But now, looking at this woman sleeping in his bed, he felt something shift inside him. A protectiveness he had not experienced since his younger sister had died of fever back in Texas. A desire to know her story, to understand what had brought her to such desperate circumstances. He stood and moved to the window, looking out at the snow that continued to fall in thick flakes, covering the world in white. The storm showed no signs of letting up. He would need to ride to the ranch in the morning to let his boss know he would be staying in town for a few days. There was no way Lydia Sinclair would be strong enough to travel anytime soon, and he would not leave her alone in his cabin, vulnerable and weak. The decision settled in his chest with a rightness that surprised him. He spent the night in his chair, dozing fitfully as he kept the fire burning and checked periodically to make sure Lydia was still breathing steadily. Once, around midnight, she cried out in her sleep, thrashing weakly beneath the blankets. He moved to her side, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are safe," he murmured. "You are safe, Lydia." She calmed at his touch, settling back into deeper sleep, and he found himself reluctant to move his hand away. Her shoulder felt small and fragile beneath his palm, and anger sparked in his chest at whatever circumstances had left her starving and alone in the snow. Morning came gray and cold, the storm finally beginning to ease. Lydia woke slowly, confusion crossing her face before memory returned. She pushed herself up on her elbows, and Nathaniel could see the effort it cost her. "How are you feeling?" he asked, rising from his chair to add more wood to the fire. "Weak," she admitted, "but warmer, and alive thanks to you." He made her more soup and watched as she managed to hold the bowl herself this time, though her hands still trembled slightly. She ate with the care of someone who had known real hunger, savoring each bite, making it last. "Tell me what happened," he said when she had finished. "How you came to be out there." Lydia set the bowl down and wrapped her arms around herself, though the cabin was warm now. "I came from Missouri," she began, her voice stronger today. "My parents died of cholera 2 years ago, and I was left with nothing. No money, no property. I worked as a seamstress in St. Louis, but the wages barely covered rent for a tiny room. I heard that the West offered opportunities, that a woman could make a new start if she was willing to work hard." She paused, staring at her hands. "I used every penny I had saved to buy a train ticket to California. I thought I could find work there, maybe open my own dress shop someday. But the train broke down outside Reno 3 days ago. They said it would be a week before they could get the parts to fix it. I had just enough money left for 2 nights at a boarding house, but then someone stole my bag. Everything I owned was in that bag. Her voice cracked, and she took a shaky breath. I tried to find work, but no one wanted to hire someone who would only be in town a few days. I thought maybe I could walk to the next town, find something there. But the storm came up so fast, and I had not eaten in so long. I just got so tired. I sat down for just a moment, and then I do not remember anything until I woke up here. Nathaniel felt anger surge through him again, but he kept his voice calm. Someone stole everything you owned, she nodded. I was sleeping at the boarding house. When I woke up, my bag was gone. The owner said she had not seen anything, that I should be more careful with my belongings. Bitterness edged her words. I think she took it herself, but I could not prove anything. You know which boarding house? The one on Virginia Street, the blue building with the broken shutter. Nathaniel knew it. Knew the owner too, a sharp-faced woman named Mrs. Hendricks, who had a reputation for being more interested in money than in providing quality accommodations. I will look into it, he said. There is no point, Lydia said wearily. It is gone. Everything is gone. Not everything. You still have your life. He stood and moved to his small trunk, pulling out a clean shirt. You are welcome to stay here until you are strong enough to decide what you want to do next. I will not press you to leave. She looked at him with those whiskey-colored eyes, suspicion and gratitude warring in their depths. Why would you help me? You do not even know me. Because it is the right thing to do, he said simply, and because no one should be left to die in the snow. Over the next few days, Lydia slowly regained her strength. Nathaniel made sure she ate regularly, preparing simple but nourishing meals and insisting she finish every bite. He slept in his chair or on the floor, giving her his bed despite her protests. Each morning, he would ride to the 00 Ranch to check in with his boss and do what work needed doing, then return in the afternoon to make sure Lydia had everything she needed. She proved to be an interesting companion. When she was not sleeping, they talked. She told him about growing up in Missouri, about her mother who had taught her to sew, about her father who had been a school teacher. She spoke of the life she had imagined for herself before disease and poverty had stripped it all away. In turn, Nathaniel shared his own story. He had grown up on a small ranch in Texas, the oldest of 4 children. When his father died of a snakebite, Nathaniel had tried to keep the ranch running, but debts had piled up faster than he could pay them. His mother had remarried within a year, to a man who made it clear there was no place for Nathaniel in the new household. His younger sister Maria had died of fever that winter, and his 2 brothers had gone east to seek their fortunes. Nathaniel had drifted west, taking work where he could find it, until he landed in Nevada. You ever think about going back? Lydia asked one evening as they sat by the fire. There is nothing to go back to, he said. The ranch was sold to pay debts. My mother died 3 years ago. My brothers and I have not spoken in years. He poked at the fire with a stick. This is home now, such as it is. It is more than I have, she said softly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something warm unfurl in his chest. She was still too thin, still recovering, but there was strength in her that had not been broken by hardship. A resilience that spoke of someone who refused to surrender even when life had given her every reason to quit. You could stay, he heard himself say. In Reno, I mean, once you are well. I could help you find work. She met his eyes, and he saw hope flicker there before caution shuttered it. I cannot impose on your kindness forever. It is not an imposition. The words came more easily now. The owner of the general store is a friend. His wife has been wanting help with her tailoring business. With your skills as a seamstress, I am sure she would hire you." "Really?" The hope in her voice made his chest ache. "Really? When you are strong enough, I will take you to meet them." A week after he had found her in the snow, Nathaniel brought Lydia to meet Samuel and Martha Green, the couple who owned the general store and ran a small tailoring business from the back room. Martha was a plump, kind-faced woman in her 50s who took one look at Lydia and immediately began fussing over her like a mother hen. "You poor dear," she clucked, ushering Lydia to a chair. "Nathaniel told us what happened. What a terrible ordeal you have been through." Lydia sat, looking uncertain but hopeful. "Nathaniel said you might have worked for someone with sewing skills. Well now, let us see what you can do." Martha brought out a piece of fabric and a needle and thread. "Show me a simple hem stitch, if you would." Lydia took the materials, and Nathaniel watched as her hands moved with practiced ease, creating a neat, nearly invisible hem. Martha examined the work, then nodded approvingly. "Very nice. Very nice indeed. Tell me, can you do buttonholes, embroidery, alterations, all of those?" Lydia said. "My mother taught me to sew when I was 6 years old. I can also draft patterns and do custom fitting." Martha's eyes lit up. "Samuel, come look at this." Her husband ambled over from behind the store counter, his weathered face creasing into a smile as Martha showed him Lydia's work. "We could use someone like her, could we not?" "We certainly could," Samuel agreed. "Martha has more orders than she can handle on her own. The question is, can we afford to pay a fair wage?" They discussed terms while Nathaniel stood back, watching Lydia's face transform as hope became reality. Martha offered room and board in the small apartment above the store, along with a percentage of the profits from the tailoring work. It was not a fortune, but it was honest work and a place to stay. "I accept," Lydia said, her voice trembling. Thank you so much." "You can start as soon as you are feeling up to it," Martha said warmly. "No rush. You need to fully recover first." As they walked back to Nathaniel's cabin, Lydia was quiet, but he could see the tension that had lived in her shoulders beginning to ease. When they reached his door, she turned to face him. "I do not know how to thank you," she said. "You saved my life, and now you have helped me find a way to rebuild it." "You do not need to thank me," he said, but the words felt inadequate. He wanted to say more, to tell her that having her in his cabin had made him realize how lonely he had been, that he had come to look forward to coming home each day, to their conversations by the fire, that the thought of her moving out filled him with a strange sadness. But he said none of those things. Instead, he simply nodded. "I am glad I could help." Lydia moved into the apartment above the general store 3 days later. Nathaniel helped her carry the few belongings Martha had given her, his cabin feeling cavernous and empty once she was gone. He told himself it was for the best. She needed to stand on her own feet, to build her own life. He had no right to want to keep her close. But over the following weeks, he found excuses to visit the general store more often than necessary. He would stop by to pick up supplies he did not really need, lingering to watch Lydia work in the back room, her head bent over fabric, her fingers flying with practiced skill. Sometimes she would look up and smile at him, and warmth would flood through his chest. Martha noticed, of course. One afternoon, when Lydia was out making deliveries, the older woman cornered Nathaniel by the counter. "You care for her," she said bluntly. It was not a question. Nathaniel felt heat creep up his neck. "I just want to make sure she is settling in well." "Nathaniel Ortega, I have known you for 3 years, and I have never seen you visit this store so often unless you needed something. And you certainly never needed to check on our previous seamstress every other day." Martha's eyes twinkled with amusement. "It is all right to care for someone, you know. It does not make you weak." "It is not that simple," he said quietly. "She has been through so much. She deserves a chance to find her own way without me complicating things. And what if she cares for you too? Martha asked. The question lodged in his chest like a stone. Did Lydia care for him? Sometimes he thought he saw something in her eyes when she looked at him, a softness that made his breath catch. But he could not be sure. Could not risk making her uncomfortable when she was finally getting her life back on track. I will not pressure her, he said firmly. Martha sighed. Sometimes, Nathaniel, the kindest thing you can do for someone is to be honest about your feelings, but that is your choice to make. Spring came early that year, the snow melting to reveal the scrubby landscape of Nevada in shades of gray and brown, and the pale green of new growth. Lydia had been working at the general store for 2 months, and her reputation as a skilled seamstress had spread. Women from all over town came to her for alterations and custom dresses, and she had begun to save money. Tucking away coins in a tin box Martha kept for her in the apartment. Nathaniel continued to visit regularly, and their friendship deepened into something comfortable and warm. They would take walks together on Sunday afternoons, Lydia's hand tucked into the crook of his arm as they strolled down the muddy streets of Reno. She told him about the dresses she was making, the gossip she heard from the ladies who came for fittings. He shared stories about the ranch, about the ornery cattle and the green cowboys who did not know one end of a horse from the other. It felt natural, easy, but beneath the surface, Nathaniel felt tension coiling tighter with each passing day. He was falling in love with her. Had probably been falling since the moment he saw her in the snow, but now it was undeniable. He loved the way she laughed, the sound like music. Loved her determination, her resilience, the kindness she showed to everyone despite the hardships she had endured. Loved the way she looked at him sometimes as though he was someone special, someone worth looking at. But he did not tell her. Could not tell her. The fear of rejection, of ruining what they had, kept the words locked tight in his chest. One Sunday in late March, they walked to the edge of town where wildflowers had begun to bloom in unexpected patches of color. Lydia bent to pick a cluster of yellow blooms, holding them to her nose with a smile. "I love spring," she said. "Everything feels new, like anything is possible." "It is possible," Nathaniel said. "You have proven that. Look at how far you have come in just a few months." She turned to him, the flowers still clutched in her hand. "I could not have done it without you. You know that, do not you? You are stronger than you think," he said. "You would have found a way. Maybe." She studied the flowers, her expression turning serious. "But I am grateful it was you who found me that day. I have thought about it so many times. What would have happened if you had not ridden past, if you had not stopped? I would be dead, buried in that snow. But instead I am here, alive, with work I love and friends who care about me. It feels like a miracle." "Not a miracle," Nathaniel said, his voice rough. "Just luck, good luck for once. Is that all it is?" She looked up at him, and something in her eyes made his heart stutter. "Luck," he swallowed hard, trying to find words that would not give too much away. "What else would it be? I do not know." She turned away, looking out across the scrubland. "Sometimes I think there are no coincidences. That we meet the people we are meant to meet, when we are meant to meet them." "Do you believe that?" he asked quietly. "I want to." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I want to believe that almost dying in the snow brought me to exactly where I was supposed to be." Nathaniel's hands clenched at his sides. He wanted to reach for her, to tell her everything he felt, but fear held him frozen. What if he was wrong? What if she was only grateful, and he was mistaking gratitude for something more? The moment stretched between them, waited with unspoken words, and then Lydia sighed and started walking back toward town. Nathaniel followed, cursing himself for a coward. That evening, as he lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, Martha's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to be honest about your feelings. But what if honesty cost him her friendship? What if she felt obligated to reciprocate because he had saved her life? The thoughts chased themselves in circles until he finally fell into uneasy sleep. He woke to pounding on his door in the middle of the night. Stumbling out of bed, he grabbed his gun and approached cautiously. "Who is it?" "Samuel Green." "Open up, Nathaniel. There is trouble." Nathaniel yanked open the door to find Samuel standing in the darkness, his face grim. "What is wrong?" "Fire at the boarding house on Virginia Street. Martha sent me to fetch you because Lydia is down there helping. The whole place is going up like tinder." Nathaniel did not wait to hear more. He grabbed his coat and ran, his heart hammering against his ribs. The boarding house. The same one where Lydia's belongings had been stolen. He could see the orange glow in the sky before he rounded the corner, hear the roar of flames and the shouts of people trying to organize a bucket brigade from the town well. The building was fully engulfed, flames licking from every window. People had formed lines passing buckets, but it was clear the structure was beyond saving. The focus now was on preventing the fire from spreading to neighboring buildings. "Where is Lydia?" he shouted to the nearest person. "She went in," a man yelled back, his face streaked with soot. "Said there was a child trapped upstairs. We tried to stop her, but she just ran in." Cold terror flooded through Nathaniel. Without thinking, he grabbed a blanket someone had dropped, dunked it in a water trough, and wrapped it around himself. Then he ran toward the burning building. "Are you insane?" someone screamed, but he ignored them. The heat was intense, even outside. Inside, it was like stepping into an oven. Smoke choked his lungs, and he could barely see through the thick gray haze. He dropped to his hands and knees where the air was slightly clearer and crawled forward. "Lydia," he shouted, his voice hoarse. "Lydia, where are you?" A beam crashed down somewhere to his left, sending up a shower of sparks. The stairs were ahead, partially collapsed but still navigable. He climbed them carefully, testing each step before putting his weight on it. On the second floor, the smoke was thicker, the heat more intense. He could hear crying, a child's terrified sobs. "Lydia," he called again. "Here." Her voice came from a room at the end of the hall. "Nathaniel, is that you?" He crawled toward the sound, finding her crouched in a corner with a small girl clutched against her chest. The child could not have been more than 4, her face buried in Lydia's shoulder. Lydia's dress was singed, her face black with soot, but her eyes locked onto his with fierce relief. "I cannot get the window open," she gasped. "It is stuck." The room was filling with smoke fast. In another minute, they would all suffocate. Nathaniel lurched to his feet and grabbed a chair, swinging it hard at the window. The glass shattered, and fresh air rushed in along with a new burst of flames as the fire found more oxygen. "We have to jump," he said. "It is only 1 story. We will land in that snow pile from the winter." "The snow will have melted," Lydia protested, coughing. "Some of it is still there. It is our only chance." He took the child from her arms. "You first. I will hand her down to you." Lydia looked at the window, at the ground below, then back at him. For a moment he thought she would argue. Then she nodded, climbed onto the sill, and jumped. He heard her cry out as she hit the ground, but then she was calling up to him. "I am fine. Send her down." Nathaniel leaned out the window, lowering the terrified child as far as he could before letting her drop. Lydia caught her, stumbling but staying upright. Then Nathaniel climbed onto the sill and jumped, hitting the muddy ground hard enough to jar his bones. Pain shot through his ankle, but he forced himself to his feet and grabbed Lydia's arm. "Run," he commanded. They ran, Lydia carrying the child, Nathaniel limping beside them. Behind them, the roof of the boarding house collapsed with a roar, sending flames shooting into the night sky. They made it to the bucket brigade line before Nathaniel's ankle gave out and he went down hard. Nathaniel. Lydia was beside him instantly, the child now in someone else's arms. "Are you hurt, ankle?" he managed. "I will be fine. Are you all right? Is the child? We are fine. We are both fine because of you." Her hands were on his face, his shoulders, checking for injuries. "You could have died." "Why did you run in there?" "Because you were in there," he said simply. "I could not leave you." She stared at him, soot-streaked and beautiful in the firelight, and something shifted in her expression. "Nathaniel Ortega, you are the most stubborn, reckless, wonderful man I have ever met." "Lydia, he started, but she cut him off. "Let us get you to the doctor. We can talk later." The doctor confirmed that Nathaniel's ankle was badly sprained but not broken. He wrapped it tightly and told him to stay off it for at least a week. Martha and Samuel insisted he stay in their spare room so someone could look after him, and Nathaniel was too exhausted to argue. He woke late the next afternoon to find Lydia sitting in a chair beside his bed, mending a shirt. She looked up when he stirred and smiled. "How do you feel?" "Like I jumped out of a burning building," he said wryly. She laughed, and the sound eased something in his chest. "How is the child?" Reunited with her mother. Mrs. Hendricks had locked her in that room as punishment for some mischief. The woman was arrested. Turns out she was responsible for several thefts from her tenants, not just my bag. "Good," Nathaniel said with satisfaction. "Did they recover any of your belongings?" "Some of them, including my mother's wedding ring, which I thought was lost forever." Lydia held up her hand, and he saw a simple gold band on her finger. "It does not fit properly, but I am just grateful to have it back." She fell silent, her fingers still on the mending. Then she set it aside and looked at him directly. "We need to talk about last night." His stomach clenched. "Lydia, if I overstepped, you said you ran into that burning building because I was in there, because you could not leave me." She leaned forward, her eyes intent on his face. "What did you mean by that?" He could lie, could deflect, could protect himself from potential rejection. But he was so tired of being afraid, tired of holding back the truth that burned in his chest more fiercely than any fire. "I meant that I care about you," he said quietly. "More than I should, probably. More than is wise. I know you are still rebuilding your life, and I do not want to complicate things for you. But when Samuel said you had run into that burning building, I thought my heart would stop. The idea of losing you, of a world without you in it, was unbearable." Lydia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Nathaniel, do you know why I ran into that building?" He shook his head. "Because I heard a child crying, and I thought about how you saved me when I was dying in the snow. How you did not hesitate to help someone in need, even though you did not know me. You showed me what it means to be truly good, truly kind. You made me want to be better, braver. So when I heard that child, I ran in because I thought, what would Nathaniel do?" A tear spilled down her cheek. "You have changed my life in so many ways. You saved me, yes, but you also gave me back my hope, my belief that there is still goodness in this world. How could I not fall in love with you?" The words seemed to hang in the air between them, and for a moment Nathaniel could not breathe. "You love me." "So much it terrifies me," she whispered. "I did not want to say anything because you saved my life, and I did not want you to think I felt obligated. But I do not feel obligated. I feel grateful and lucky and completely, utterly in love with you." Joy surged through him, bright and overwhelming. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I have loved you since the first time you smiled at me, maybe even before that, maybe from the moment I saw you in the snow and knew I would do anything to save you." She leaned down and kissed him, soft and sweet, and he felt like his heart might burst from happiness. When she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. "So what do we do now?" she asked. "Now," he said, tightening his grip on her hand, We build a life together, if that is what you want." "It is all I want," she said. "You are all I want." They married in late April in a simple ceremony at the small church on the edge of Reno. Martha stood up with Lydia and Samuel with Nathaniel. The whole town turned out, it seemed. Everyone who had heard the story of the woman saved from the snow and the cowboy who loved her. The child they had rescued from the fire, a little girl named Emma, threw flower petals down the aisle with solemn concentration. Lydia wore a dress she had made herself, simple but elegant, with lace at the collar and cuffs that she had painstakingly stitched by hand. Nathaniel wore his best shirt and pants, his boots polished to a shine. When the preacher asked if he took this woman to be his wife, his "I do" rang out clear and strong, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind about his commitment. After the ceremony, they had a small celebration at the general store, with cake Martha had baked and cider Samuel had been saving for a special occasion. Nathaniel could not stop looking at Lydia, his wife, could not quite believe that this beautiful, strong, remarkable woman had chosen him. As evening fell, they walked back to Nathaniel's cabin, which would now be their home. Lydia had already moved some of her things in, her dresses hanging next to his shirts, her sewing basket by the window where the light was best. It was strange and wonderful to see her belongings mixed with his, to know that she would be there when he came home every day. "Happy?" he asked, pulling her close once they were inside. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she said, resting her head on his chest. "When I was lying in that snow, I thought my life was over. I thought I had failed at everything, but I was wrong. My life was not ending, it was beginning." "Our life was beginning," he corrected gently. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Yes, our life." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Lydia continued her work at the general store, her skill and reputation bringing in steady income. Nathaniel worked at the ranch, returning each evening to a home filled with warmth and love. They took walks on Sunday afternoons, had long conversations by the fire, made plans for the future. Martha had been right. Nathaniel reflected one evening as he watched Lydia bent over her sewing, lamplight turning her hair to gold. Being honest about his feelings had been the kindest thing he could have done, for both of them. "What are you thinking about?" Lydia asked, looking up with a smile. "How lucky I am," he said simply. "We both are," she said. "We found each other when we both needed to be found." By late summer, Lydia discovered she was expecting their first child. The news filled them both with joy and terror in equal measure. Nathaniel fretted over her constantly, insisting she rest more, work less. Lydia tolerated his hovering with amused patience, assuring him that women had been having babies since the dawn of time and she would be fine. "Besides," she said one evening, patting her still flat stomach, "this baby is already lucky. It has parents who love each other and love it already. That is more than many children can say. It will have everything we can give it," Nathaniel promised. "A safe home, food on the table, and more love than it knows what to do with." Their son was born in March of 1884, exactly 1 year after Lydia had nearly died in the snow. They named him Thomas, after Nathaniel's father, and from the moment Nathaniel held his son for the first time, he understood a depth of love he had not known was possible. Lydia recovered quickly from the birth, her strength and resilience showing through once again. Within weeks, she was back to her sewing, though she worked from home now with Thomas sleeping in a cradle nearby. Nathaniel would come home from the ranch to find her singing softly to their son, her voice sweet and clear, and his heart would swell with gratitude for this life they had built together. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Nathaniel was offered a promotion at the ranch. The foreman was retiring, and the owner wanted Nathaniel to take his place. It meant more responsibility but also better pay and a house on the ranch property that came with the job. He discussed it with Lydia that evening after Thomas was asleep. "It would mean leaving the cabin," he said. "I know you have made it into a real home." "Home is not a place," Lydia said, taking his hand. "Home is wherever we are together. If this is a good opportunity for you, for our family, then we should take it." They moved to the ranch that summer, to a larger house with room for Thomas to run and play. Lydia set up her sewing room in the brightest bedroom, and within months, she was taking on more work than ever, women traveling from Reno and beyond to commission dresses from her. Life was good. Better than good. Some mornings, Nathaniel would wake before dawn and lie in bed watching the sun come up, Lydia asleep beside him and Thomas's soft breathing audible from the next room, and wonder how he had gotten so lucky. 2 years after Thomas was born, Lydia gave birth to twin girls. They named them Maria, after Nathaniel's sister, and Sophie, after Lydia's mother. The birth was difficult, and for a few terrifying hours, Nathaniel feared he might lose both Lydia and the babies. But his wife was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and she fought through the exhaustion and pain to bring their daughters safely into the world. "3 children," she said weakly when it was over, cradling a baby in each arm while Nathaniel held Thomas, who was confused and fascinated by the tiny squirming bundles. "We have quite a family now." "The best family," Nathaniel agreed, his throat tight with emotion. The years that followed were busy and chaotic and full of joy. Thomas grew into a curious, energetic boy who followed his father everywhere, wanting to learn about ranching and horses and everything to do with the land. Maria and Sophie were inseparable, mirror images of each other with their dark hair and whiskey-colored eyes that they had inherited from their mother. Lydia balanced motherhood with her sewing business, often working late into the night after the children were asleep. Nathaniel helped as much as he could, changing diapers and soothing crying babies and reading stories until his voice went hoarse. They were tired, constantly tired, but happy in a way that went bone deep. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Nathaniel took Lydia on a picnic to the spot where he had found her in the snow all those years ago. The patch of ground looked different now in the spring sunshine, with wildflowers blooming and birds singing in the scrub brush. "You remember?" he asked, spreading out a blanket. "I will never forget," she said softly. "Sometimes I still have nightmares about it, about the cold, the hunger, thinking I was going to die alone. But then I wake up, and you are beside me, and our children are in the next room, and I realize that the worst moment of my life led to the best moments." "I think about it too," Nathaniel admitted. "About what would have happened if I had not ridden out that day. If I had turned back sooner or taken a different path. All the tiny choices that led to me being in exactly the right place at exactly the right time." "Fate," Lydia said, leaning against his shoulder. "I have decided I do believe in it. We were meant to find each other." "I am glad we did," he said, kissing the top of her head. "I am glad for every moment, even the hard ones. They all led us here." They sat in comfortable silence, watching clouds drift across the bright Nevada sky. After a while, Lydia pulled something from her pocket and held it out to him. It was a silver pocket watch, engraved with their wedding date and the inscription, "To Nathaniel, who saved me in every way a person can be saved. Love, Lydia." Nathaniel's vision blurred as he read the words. "Lydia, this is too much." "It is not nearly enough," she said firmly. "But I wanted you to have something that shows how much you mean to me. How grateful I am, every single day, that you were the one who found me. That you were the one who showed me kindness when I had nothing. That you loved me when I did not think I deserved to be loved." "You have always deserved to be loved," he said fiercely. "Always." She smiled, that beautiful smile that still made his heart skip. "I know that now, you taught me that." As the children grew older, the family prospered. Nathaniel's position as foreman was secure, and his reputation as a fair and skilled rancher spread throughout Nevada. Lydia's sewing business expanded until she had 2 women working for her, handling the simpler alterations while she focused on custom designs that wealthy clients commissioned from as far away as San Francisco. Thomas, at age 10, was already an accomplished rider and handler. He had his father's steady nature and his mother's determination, a combination that would serve him well. Maria and Sophie, at 8, were different as night and day despite their identical appearances. Maria was quiet and thoughtful, preferring to sit with her mother and learn to sew. Sophie was wild and adventurous, climbing trees and catching frogs, and declaring that she would be a rancher like her father when she grew up. Nathaniel loved watching them grow, seeing pieces of himself and Lydia reflected in their faces and personalities. But sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, he would sit with Lydia on their porch and remember how it had all begun. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked one such evening. "Coming west, nearly dying, all the hardship you went through." Lydia was quiet for a long moment, her hand clasped in his. "I regret the pain," she said finally. "I regret losing my parents so young, losing everything I had, but I do not regret the path that brought me here. Every hardship, every moment of suffering led me to you. And you gave me a life more wonderful than anything I could have imagined." "You gave me the same," he said softly. "Before you, I was just going through the motions, working, sleeping, existing. I did not know what I was missing until I found you." "We found each other," she corrected, as she always did, in the spring of 1893. 10 years after they first met, Nathaniel and Lydia stood in front of a mirror in their bedroom, getting ready for a dance in town. Nathaniel wore a new suit that Lydia had made for him, and she wore a deep blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes. He watched her pin up her hair, marveling that she was even more beautiful now than she had been at 25. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. "Just thinking about how much I love you," he said. "How grateful I am for every day we have together." She turned from the mirror and came to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I love you too, more now than I did 10 years ago, and I loved you desperately then." "How is that possible?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Because every day with you shows me a new reason to love you," she said simply. "Every morning I wake up and you are there. Every evening you come home and your face lights up when you see the children and me. Every moment you show me through actions and words that I am valued and cherished. How could my love not grow?" Nathaniel kissed her then, deep and slow, pouring everything he felt into it. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "We should go," Lydia said, but she made no move to step away. "We should," Nathaniel agreed, also not moving. They did eventually make it to the dance, where they swirled around the floor with the easy grace of partners who knew each other's movements instinctively. Their children watched from the sidelines with Martha and Samuel, who had become like grandparents to them. The whole town seemed to be there, and more than once, Nathaniel overheard someone talking about him and Lydia. "Such a love story," one woman sighed, "like something from a novel." "Better than a novel," her companion replied, "because it is real." Nathaniel caught Lydia's eye and saw that she had heard too. She grinned at him and he spun her dramatically, making her laugh. "Real." Yes, it was real, more real and true and good than anything he could have imagined. The years continued to roll by, bringing changes and challenges, but also deep contentment. Thomas left home at 18 to work on a ranch in Montana, writing long letters home about his adventures and the pretty girl he had met at a church social. Maria married a banker's son and moved to Virginia City, where she opened her own dress shop, following in her mother's footsteps. Sophie, true to her childhood declaration, married a rancher and settled on a spread just 20 miles away, close enough to visit regularly. Nathaniel and Lydia became grandparents, delighting in the babies their children brought home. They grew older together, silver threading through their hair, lines deepening around their eyes. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by time and trials and the shared joy of a life built together. On a spring day in 1906, exactly 23 years after Nathaniel had found Lydia in the snow, they took their grandchildren to that same spot for a picnic. The children, 7 of them ranging in age from 2 to 12, ran around chasing butterflies while Nathaniel and Lydia sat on a blanket and watched. "Tell us the story, Grandma," the oldest begged, flopping down beside Lydia. "Tell us how Grandpa saved you." Lydia looked at Nathaniel, her eyes still that beautiful whiskey color, though her hair was now more silver than dark. "Should we tell them? They have heard it 100 times," Nathaniel said, but he was smiling. "But we never get tired of it," another grandchild chimed in. "It is the best story." So Lydia told them, as she had told them many times before. She told them about being lost and alone and so hungry she could barely stand, about the snow that had seemed determined to bury her, about giving up, lying down, accepting that she would die. And then about the cowboy who had appeared like a miracle, who had carried her to safety and fed her soup and refused to let her give up on life. "And then you fell in love," the youngest said with certainty, "and lived happily ever after." "Yes," Lydia said, reaching for Nathaniel's hand. "We did." But Nathaniel shook his head slightly. "Not just happily ever after, because that makes it sound like everything was perfect after that moment, and it was not. We had hard times. Years when money was tight. Nights when babies would not stop crying. Arguments and disagreements and moments when we frustrated each other beyond measure." The children looked confused, and Lydia squeezed his hand, understanding where he was going. "What your grandfather means," she said, "is that love is not magic that makes everything easy. It is a choice you make, every single day, to care for someone else as much as you care for yourself, to support them through hard times, to celebrate with them in good times, to keep choosing them even when things are difficult. And we have chosen each other every day for 23 years, Nathaniel continued. That is what makes our story special. Not that I found your grandmother in the snow, but that we have built a life together, day by day, choice by choice. That is the real love story." The children were quiet, processing this. Then the oldest nodded slowly. "So the happy ending is not really an ending at all. It is just a beginning that keeps going." "Exactly," Lydia said with a proud smile. "Exactly right." As the sun began to set, painting the Nevada sky in shades of orange and pink and gold, the family packed up their picnic and headed home. Nathaniel walked beside Lydia, their hands clasped together as they had been for over 2 decades. Behind them, their grandchildren chattered and laughed, full of energy and life. "You think they understand?" Lydia asked softly. "Maybe not yet," Nathaniel said, "but someday they will, when they are older and fall in love themselves. Then they will understand that the best love stories are not about perfect people or perfect circumstances. They are about imperfect people who choose each other anyway." "Like us," Lydia said. "Like us," he agreed. That night, lying in bed with Lydia's head on his shoulder, Nathaniel thought about all the years behind them and all the years still to come. He thought about the scared, desperate woman he had found in the snow and the strong, confident woman beside him now. He thought about their children and grandchildren, the legacy they had built together. "Nathaniel," Lydia's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes, love, Thank you for everything, for saving me that day, for loving me all these years, for building this beautiful life with me." He tightened his arm around her, pulling her closer. "Thank you for letting me, for loving me back, for making every day brighter just by being in it." She tilted her face up to kiss him, sweet and familiar and still capable of making his heart race after all these years. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too," he whispered back. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that, the years that followed brought more joy and some sorrow. Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78 with Martha by his side. Martha followed him 2 years later, and Nathaniel and Lydia mourned the loss of the couple who had been so instrumental in bringing them together. They made sure Martha and Samuel were buried side by side, their headstones bearing inscriptions of love and devotion. Thomas married his Montana girl and had 4 children of his own. Maria's dress shop became one of the most successful in Virginia City, and she expanded to a second location in Carson City. Sophie had 5 children who ran wild on her ranch, learning to rope and ride almost before they could walk. Nathaniel retired from his position as foreman at 60, his body finally demanding rest after decades of hard physical labor. But retirement did not mean stopping. He helped Sophie on her ranch, taught his grandsons and granddaughters to ride, and spent long evenings on the porch with Lydia, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. Lydia also slowed her work, taking on only special projects and spending most of her time with family. She taught her granddaughters to sew, passing on skills and techniques her own mother had taught her so many years ago. She told them stories about growing up in Missouri, about the journey west, about the life she and Nathaniel had built together. On their 30th anniversary, their children threw them a party that brought together seemingly everyone in Reno. The town had grown over the years, but many of the old-timers remained, people who remembered the story of the woman saved from the snow. They came to celebrate and to honor a love that had inspired so many of them. 30 years, Lydia marveled, standing with Nathaniel in the middle of the crowded room. Has it really been that long? Feels like yesterday and forever, both at the same time, Nathaniel said. Like time moves differently when you are with the person you love. You are getting philosophical in your old age, she teased. I've had a lot of time to think about it, he said. About how lucky we are. About how that one moment, me deciding to ride the perimeter that day, changed everything. About fate and choice and love. And what have you concluded? She asked. That life is precious and fragile and worth fighting for, he said simply. That love is both the easiest and hardest thing in the world, that I would do it all again, every moment, just to end up here with you. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. How do you still make me cry after 30 years? Because you have a tender heart, he said, wiping the tears gently from her cheeks. It is one of the things I love most about you. They danced that night, slower than they once had but with no less joy. Surrounded by children and grandchildren and friends, they celebrated not just their anniversary but the life they had built. A life that had started in the snow and cold and desperation, but had bloomed into something warm and beautiful and enduring. As they grew older, Nathaniel and Lydia found comfort in routine. Morning coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise. Long walks around the ranch, moving slower now but still enjoying the fresh air and each other's company. Evening meals with whichever children or grandchildren stopped by. Quiet nights by the fire. Lydia sewing while Nathaniel read aloud from the newspaper. It was a simple life, but it was theirs, and they treasured every moment. In the winter of 1913, 30 years after Nathaniel had found Lydia in the snow, Nevada experienced another harsh winter. Snow fell heavily, coating the landscape in white. Nathaniel stood at the window one morning, watching the flakes drift down, and felt Lydia slip her arm through his. "Does it make you remember?" she asked softly. "Every time it snows," he admitted. "I think about how close I came to losing you before I ever really had you, about how different my life would be if I had not ridden out that day." "But you did ride out," Lydia said. "You did find me, and we have had 30 beautiful years together. That is what matters." "30 years is not enough," Nathaniel said, pulling her close. "I want 30 more, 60 more, I want forever." "Then we will have to settle for however much time we are given," Lydia said practically, "and make sure every moment counts." They stood together watching the snow, two people who had found each other when they both needed finding most. Two people who had chosen each other every day for 3 decades. Two people who loved each other with a depth and constancy that had only grown stronger with time. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white, but inside their home it was warm and bright and full of love. And that, Nathaniel thought as he held his wife close, was all that mattered. That after all the years, all the challenges, all the changes life had brought, they still had each other. That evening, with the fire crackling merrily and their grandchildren playing nearby, Nathaniel caught Lydia's eye across the room. She smiled at him, that same smile that had captured his heart 30 years ago, and he smiled back. No words were needed. After 3 decades together, they could communicate entire conversations with just a look. "I love you," his eyes said. "I love you too," hers replied. "Always. Forever." Their love story had started with an ending, with Lydia lying in the snow waiting to die. But it had transformed into a beginning, into a life neither of them could have imagined. A life filled with love and laughter, with children and grandchildren, with simple joys and profound happiness. Years continued to pass, marking their story with the gentle rhythm of seasons changing and children growing. By 1920, Nathaniel and Lydia had been married for 37 years. They were in their 60s now, their bodies slowing but their love remaining as vital as ever. They had 14 grandchildren, and just that year, their first great-grandchild, a baby girl named Lily who Thomas's eldest son had brought for them to meet. Holding that tiny baby in his arms, Nathaniel was overcome with emotion. "We did this," he said to Lydia, who sat beside him, her hand on his knee. "We created all of this, this whole family, this whole life. It started with just the two of us, and look at what we have built." "Look at what love can build," Lydia corrected gently. "That is the real miracle. Not just that you saved me, but that we chose to build something together. Every day, every year, adding another brick to the foundation." "I would build it all again," Nathaniel said. "Every single day I would choose you." "And I would choose you," Lydia said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Every time, in every life, I would choose you." On their 40th anniversary in 1923, their children and grandchildren pooled their resources to buy them something special. Train tickets to San Francisco, where they would spend a week seeing the sights and staying in a nice hotel. It was an extravagance, but their children insisted they deserved it. The trip was magical. They walked along the waterfront, rode the cable cars, ate at restaurants where the food was fancier than anything they had at home. But the best part was simply being together, away from the daily demands of life, able to focus entirely on each other. One evening, standing on a pier watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, Lydia turned to Nathaniel. "If you could go back and change anything, would you?" He thought about it seriously, knowing she deserved an honest answer. "I would want to find you sooner," he said finally, "to save you from some of the pain you endured before we met, but I would not change anything about our life together. Every moment, good and bad, has been exactly what it should be." Even the arguments, she asked with a small smile. Even those, he confirmed. They taught us how to communicate, how to compromise, how to really see each other. Without them, we would not be as strong as we are. We are strong, are we not? Lydia said wonderingly. After 40 years, we are still standing, still together, still in love. More in love than ever, Nathaniel said. I did not know it was possible to love someone more with each passing year, but you have taught me that it is. They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon. Two people who had weathered everything life had thrown at them and emerged stronger for it. Two people who had turned a moment of near tragedy into a lifetime of love. When they returned home to Nevada, they were greeted with a surprise party that their entire family had organized. The ranch house was decorated with flowers and ribbons, and a huge meal had been prepared. As Nathaniel and Lydia walked through the door, everyone shouted surprise, and then burst into applause. "What is all this?" Lydia asked, tears already forming. "This is to celebrate you," Maria said, stepping forward to hug her mother. "To celebrate 40 years of showing us what real love looks like. You and Dad have given us the greatest gift parents can give their children, the example of a strong, loving marriage. We wanted to honor that." Sophie added, "Every one of us has been shaped by watching you two love each other. You have shown us what to look for in our own partners, what to work toward in our own marriages. You have set the standard." Thomas, now a weathered man in his early 40s, put his arm around both his parents. "You taught us that love is not just a feeling but an action. That it is choosing someone every day, supporting them through everything. That it is patient and kind and enduring. We are all better people because of your example." Nathaniel could not speak past the lump in his throat, so he simply pulled his family close, Lydia at the center of it all, and let himself feel the overwhelming gratitude for this life they had built together. As the party continued around them, Nathaniel and Lydia slipped away to their bedroom for a moment of quiet. They stood at the window, looking out at the ranch that had been their home for so many years, and reflected on everything that had brought them to this moment. "We did well, did we not?" Lydia asked. "We did better than well," Nathaniel said. "We did extraordinarily." "I never imagined this," Lydia confessed. "When I was lying in that snow, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to live for, but you showed me I was wrong. You showed me that my life was just beginning, that the best was yet to come." "We showed each other," Nathaniel said. "I was just existing before you, going through the motions. You gave me purpose, direction, joy. You made me want to be better, do better, build something meaningful." "We built it together," Lydia said firmly. "Everything we have, everything we are, we created together." They rejoined the party, dancing and laughing with their family late into the night. Nathaniel watched his children and grandchildren, saw the love and respect in their eyes when they looked at him and Lydia, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was his legacy. Not money or property, but love. Love that would continue through his children and their children, rippling out into the future in ways he could not even imagine. The next few years brought changes. Martha's daughter took over the general store, though it was never quite the same without Martha and Samuel. The ranch changed hands, sold to a younger man who modernized operations. Nathaniel and Lydia moved into a smaller house in town, something easier to maintain as they grew older, but through all the changes, they remained constant, still choosing each other, still finding joy in simple moments, still in love with the same depth and passion that had defined their 40-plus years together. In the spring of 1928, 45 years after they met, Lydia fell ill. It started as a cough that would not go away, then developed into something more serious. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia and ordered complete bed rest. Nathaniel barely left her side, holding her hand, reading to her, making sure she took her medicine and ate what little she could. "You need to rest too," Lydia said weakly one afternoon. "You will make yourself sick." "I am not leaving you," Nathaniel said firmly. "You stayed by my side when I sprained my ankle all those years ago. I am staying by yours now." "That was just a sprained ankle," she protested. "This is different." "No, it is not," he said. "Whether it is a sprained ankle or pneumonia or anything else, we face it together. That is what we have always done. That is what we will always do." She squeezed his hand weakly. "I love you so much." "I love you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are going to get better. You are going to fight this and win, just like you have fought and won everything else life has thrown at you." And she did. Slowly, over the course of several weeks, Lydia's strength returned. The cough faded, her appetite came back, and color returned to her cheeks. By summer, she was back to her normal self, sewing and visiting grandchildren, and taking walks with Nathaniel in the evening. "You scared me," Nathaniel admitted one night as they sat on their porch watching the stars. "I scared myself," Lydia confessed. "For a while there, I thought I might not make it, and all I could think about was you, about how I was not ready to leave you, about how we still had more life to live together." "We do," Nathaniel said fiercely. "We have years left, decades even." She smiled sadly. "We are not young anymore, my love. We have been blessed with many years already. We cannot expect to live forever." "I can expect whatever I want," he said stubbornly. "And I expect to grow old with you, older than we already are. I expect to celebrate our 50th anniversary and our 60th and beyond." "Then that is what we will do," Lydia said, leaning against him. "We will keep living, keep loving, keep choosing each other for as long as we possibly can." They kept that promise. Through the late 1920s and into the 1930s, even as the country faced the Great Depression and hard times fell on many, Nathaniel and Lydia persevered. They had saved carefully over the years, and while they had to tighten their belts like everyone else, they never went hungry. More importantly, they had each other, and that made any hardship bearable. Their 50th anniversary in 1933 was a quieter affair than previous milestones, with money tight for everyone. But their family gathered nonetheless, bringing what food they could to share in a potluck celebration. 50 years, half a century of marriage, of love, of partnership. 50 years, Lydia marveled, looking around at the sea of faces, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. 50 years since you saved me in the snow. Best decision I ever made, Nathaniel said, riding out that day. Stopping when I saw you, bringing you home. Every choice after that has been easy because it has always led back to you. They cut a simple cake that Maria had baked, and Thomas stood to give a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who have shown all of us what it means to truly love someone, who have weathered every storm together and come out stronger, who have built not just a marriage but a legacy of love that will continue for generations, to 50 more years, to 50 more years." Everyone echoed, though Nathaniel and Lydia shared a realistic smile. They were in their 70s now. 50 more years was unlikely, but they would take whatever time they were given and be grateful for it. As the 1930s progressed into the 1940s, Nathaniel and Lydia slowed down considerably. They spent most of their days at home, content with quiet routines and visits from family. They watched as their grandchildren married and had children of their own, as the family tree expanded in ways they could never have imagined. On quiet mornings, Nathaniel would watch Lydia moving around their small kitchen, making coffee or preparing breakfast, and marvel that she was still here, still with him. Her hair was completely white now, her movements slower, but she was still beautiful to him. still the woman he had fallen in love with all those years ago. "What are you staring at?" she would ask, catching him watching. "Just you," he would reply. "Always you." In the summer of 1943, 60 years after Nathaniel had found Lydia in the snow, they were sitting on their porch when Sophie arrived with surprising news. Thomas had passed away peacefully in his sleep in Montana. He was 60 years old and had lived a good, full life, but the loss hit them both hard. "Our firstborn," Lydia wept in Nathaniel's arms. "Our baby boy." "I know," Nathaniel said, his own tears falling. "I know, my love." They traveled to Montana for the funeral, surrounded by their remaining children and countless grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It was painful, burying their son, but there was also comfort in seeing how loved he had been, how many lives he had touched. He had built a good life, a loving family, following the example his parents had set. After Thomas's death, Nathaniel and Lydia became even more aware of time's passage. They were both in their 80s now, living on borrowed time as far as they were concerned. Each day together felt precious, a gift to be treasured. "I am not afraid of dying," Lydia told Nathaniel one evening, "but I am afraid of leaving you alone." "Do not think about that," Nathaniel said, though the same fear lived in his heart. "We will face whatever comes together just as we always have. Promise me something," Lydia said seriously. "Promise me that if I go first you will not give up. You will keep living, keep finding joy for me." "Only if you promise the same," he said. "If I go first you have to keep living. Keep sewing, keep laughing with the grandchildren, keep finding reasons to smile." They shook on it solemnly, two old people making promises they hoped they would never have to keep, but life had other plans. In the spring of 1945, Nathaniel suffered a heart attack. He survived, but it left him weakened, confined mostly to bed. Lydia tended to him with the same fierce devotion he had shown her 62 years earlier when he had found her in the snow. "I am supposed to be taking care of you," he said weakly one afternoon. "We take care of each other," Lydia said firmly. "That is how this works. That is how it has always worked." She fed him soup, just as he had fed her all those years ago. She held his hand through the pain, read to him, kept him company. Their roles had reversed, but the love remained constant. Nathaniel recovered enough to get out of bed, though he remained weak. He and Lydia spent their days sitting together, holding hands, sometimes talking, sometimes simply enjoying each other's presence. They had been together for so long that words were often unnecessary. Just being near each other was enough. On their 62nd anniversary in 1945, they had a small celebration with just Maria and Sophie and a few of the grandchildren who lived nearby. It was simple cake and coffee and stories about the old days, but it was perfect. 62 years, Sophie said in wonder. "Most people do not even live that long, and you two have been married that long." "It is because we found each other when we needed each other most," Lydia said, looking at Nathaniel with the same love that had defined their entire marriage. "And we never let go." "Never," Nathaniel agreed. "Through everything, we held on to each other." As 1945 turned into 1946, both Nathaniel and Lydia's health began to fail more noticeably. They were 84 years old, and their bodies were simply wearing out. But their minds remained sharp, and more importantly, their love remained strong. One winter morning, 63 years after Nathaniel had found Lydia in the snow, he woke to find her watching him with those whiskey-colored eyes that age had not dimmed. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning, my love," she replied. "I was just lying here thinking about how lucky I am to have had all these years with you, to have built this beautiful life together." "I am the lucky one," Nathaniel said. "You gave me everything. A family, a purpose, a reason to be better than I was. You made me whole." We made each other whole, Lydia said, taking his hand. That is what love does. It completes us. They spent that day as they spent most days now together, talking quietly, reminiscing about their life. They spoke of the children they had raised, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their legacy forward. They remembered the hard times and the good times, the arguments and the reconciliations, the thousand small moments that had woven together to create their life. As evening fell and the winter sun painted their bedroom in shades of gold, Lydia looked at Nathaniel with sudden urgency. "Promise me you know how much I love you, how much I have always loved you, how grateful I am for every single day we have had together." "I know," Nathaniel said, squeezing her hand. "And you know the same about me, do not you? How completely and utterly you have been loved." "I know," she whispered. "I have always known." They fell asleep holding hands as they had done for 63 years. And in the morning, Maria came to check on them and found them still holding hands, peaceful expressions on their faces, having passed away in their sleep within hours of each other. The funeral was held on a sunny day in February 1946, and it seemed like half of Nevada turned out to pay their respects. The story of Nathaniel and Lydia had become legendary in Reno, the cowboy who had saved the woman from the snow, and the love that had grown between them. They were buried side by side in the town cemetery, their headstones bearing simple inscriptions. Nathaniel Ortega, beloved husband, father, grandfather, he chose love every day. And Lydia Ortega, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she was saved by love and gave it freely in return. At the reception after the funeral, Maria stood to speak about her parents. "My mother and father showed us all what it means to truly love someone," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "They met in the most unlikely of circumstances, her dying in the snow, him riding by at just the right moment. But from that moment on, they chose each other. Every single day for 63 years, they chose each other. They chose love over anger, forgiveness over resentment, togetherness over independence. They showed us that love is not just a feeling but an action, a choice, a commitment. And because of their example, every one of us knows what it means to love and be loved. That is their legacy. That is what they leave behind." Sophie added, "They lived their entire marriage as though every day was a gift, because to them it was. My mother had been saved from death and my father had found purpose. Together they built something beautiful. And now they are together still, wherever they are, because a love like theirs does not end with death. It goes on forever." The family gathered at Maria's house after the funeral, sharing stories and memories. Thomas's children told stories their father had told them about growing up with Nathaniel and Lydia. Sophie's children shared memories of visiting their grandparents and always feeling so loved and welcome. The great-grandchildren, some of whom were teenagers now, talked about the wisdom their great-grandparents had imparted, the love they had shown. As the evening wore on and people began to leave, Maria and Sophie sat together, looking at old photographs of their parents. Pictures from their wedding day, looking so young and hopeful. Pictures with babies and toddlers. Pictures from anniversaries and holidays. Pictures from just last year, two elderly people still holding hands, still looking at each other with love. They really did it, did they not? Maria said softly. "They really built a forever kind of love." "They did," Sophie agreed. "And they showed us it was possible. That is the greatest gift they could have given us." In the years that followed, the story of Nathaniel and Lydia continued to be told. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren shared it with each new generation. The tale of how Nathaniel had found Lydia in the snow, half dead from hunger and cold, and had saved her life. How he had fed her soup and nursed her back to health. how they had fallen in love and built a life together that lasted 63 years, how they had died within hours of each other, still holding hands, their love enduring even beyond death. The story became a touchstone for the family, a reminder of what was possible when two people truly committed to each other. Young couples about to be married would visit Nathaniel and Lydia's graves, asking for blessings on their own unions. Families facing hard times would remember how Nathaniel and Lydia had weathered the Great Depression and other challenges, and find strength to persevere. Their small house in town was eventually sold, but the new owners kept it much as it had been, even hanging a small plaque by the door that read, "Home of Nathaniel and Lydia Ortega, whose love story inspired generations." It became a landmark of sorts in Reno, a place where people would pause and remember that true love really did exist. The general store where Lydia had worked eventually closed, unable to compete with larger businesses, but Martha and Samuel's daughter made sure to preserve some of Lydia's dresses, donating them to the Nevada Historical Society. They hung in a special exhibit about the early days of Reno, with a placard telling Lydia's story, how she had come west with nothing, had nearly died, and had been saved by a kind cowboy who became the love of her life. The ranch where Nathaniel had worked as foreman changed hands several times over the decades, but there was always someone who remembered Nathaniel Ortega, the fair and skilled rancher who had loved his wife with legendary devotion. New foremen were told about Nathaniel, about his work ethic and his kindness, about how he would rush home every evening to be with his family. As the 20th century turned into the 21st, Nathaniel and Lydia's great-great-grandchildren carried on the family traditions. They gathered every year on the anniversary of Nathaniel finding Lydia in the snow, sharing the story with the youngest members of the family. They visited the graves, bringing flowers and telling their ancestors about their lives, their loves, their struggles and triumphs. The story had grown somewhat in the telling over the years, acquiring embellishments and additional details. But the core remained true. A cowboy had saved a woman from death in the snow, had fed her soup and given her shelter, and had fallen in love with her. She had loved him back, fiercely and faithfully. Together they had built a life of purpose and meaning, raising a family and creating a legacy that would endure for generations. It was a simple story, really, but it was also a profound one, because it showed that love could bloom even in the harshest circumstances, that kindness could change lives, that two people who chose each other, who committed to each other, who worked together through every challenge, could create something beautiful and enduring. And that was the true happily ever after of Nathaniel and Lydia Ortega. Not that their lives were perfect or easy, but that they faced everything together. Not that they never struggled, but that they never gave up on each other. Not that their love was magic, but that it was real and solid and lasting. They had started with nothing, her dying in the snow, him a lonely cowboy, and had created everything. A family, a legacy, a love story that would be told and retold, inspiring others to believe that true love was possible, that kindness mattered, that choosing someone every day could build a lifetime of happiness. Their story lived on, carried forward by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and beyond. It lived on in the values they had instilled, in the example they had set, in the love they had shown not just to each other but to everyone around them. And somewhere, in whatever came after this life, Nathaniel and Lydia were together still choosing each other, still in love, still building their forever one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of devotion at a time, because that was what love was. Not a feeling that faded, but a choice that endured. Not magic, but work. Not perfect, but real. And Nathaniel and Lydia had proven that such love was not just possible but transformative, not just beautiful but essential. Their love had started in the snow on a cold January day in 1883. It had grown through 63 years of marriage, through challenges and triumphs, through ordinary days and extraordinary moments. And it had ended only when their bodies gave out, but even then, not really. Because the love they had built lived on in every person they had touched, every life they had influenced, every heart they had inspired. That was the real ending of their story. Not death, but life. Life that continued, love that endured, a legacy that would never fade. Nathaniel Ortega had saved Lydia Sinclair from death in the snow. But in doing so, he had also saved himself, finding purpose and joy and meaning in loving her. And together, they had saved countless others, showing through their example what it meant to truly love someone. It was a simple story of a cowboy and the woman he saved. But it was also so much more. It was a testament to the power of love, the importance of kindness, the beauty of commitment. It was proof that happy endings were possible, that love could conquer hardship, that two people who truly chose each other could build something that would last not just a lifetime but generations. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not the challenges they had faced or the hardships they had endured, but the love they had shared and the life they had built. Together. Always together. From that cold January day in 1883, when he found her in the snow, to the winter morning in 1946 when they left this world hand in hand, they had been together. And their love, their beautiful, enduring, transformative love, would live on forever.